Hi, this is Robert Pope, cartoonist. I draw Looney Tunes for DC Comics and the Peanuts Gang for Boom Comics and Simon Spotlight Books. And you're listening to Southern Fried Geekery.
How do we sound?
We sound good. We sound lovely. The mics and the peaks are where they're supposed to be. Nice little vibrato that's happening there that I can get out later, but that's fine. So
just a little vibrato.
Like
even
in the dead space, there's a little bit of just little.
It's
things.
the electronic noise in here,
and I can cut that out through my wizardry in editing later. It'll be gone. It won't be there. It'll just be our succulent, soulful. Exuberant voices.
Speaking of wizardry and witchery, how far are you in Witcher 3?
Oh, I'm sure I'm still at kindergarten level.
Yeah.
I don't know. What am I doing now? Trying to find the guy's wife and daughter.
The guy's wife and daughter?
Yeah, the drunk.
There's so many missions in that thing.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not so hot on this game, but I'm playing it. It's not bad.
Okay.
Red Dead Redemption 2 has just ruined it for me, man. That game was.
I mean, this is the
amazing.
precursor to Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah.
It's 4 years before Red Dead Redemption 2, but you can see how.
Well, and what I like
affected the other.
I just like the setting of Red Dead Redemption 2. The
Old
Old
sure.
West.
Yeah.
It made everything else. When you run into something extraordinary, it really made it feel extra weird because it's set in the Old West. Yeah. As opposed to the Witcher 3, which you're in a sword and sorcery.
World, yeah.
So, you run into a werewolf. It's like, yeah, that should be here.
That should be here.
Meanwhile, in Red Dead Redemption 2, you run into a spaceship cult and you're like, what the is this? It just really.
I mean, for sure. Red Dead Redemption is a better game, but Witcher is just, it's a lot of fun.
The atmosphere of that game is like something I've never experienced before. It's great.
You know what else we've never experienced before? Ep.113 of the Southern Fried Geekery podcast. And we're going to, for the
first time. Look at him segue.
I know. I love your video game chats. I know nothing about what you speak, though. I am not the video game guy.
I'm not either. I play like 3 video games a year.
But you love them. And
the ones I play, I love.
I love that you love them. But like I said, this is episode 113 of the Southern Fried Geekery podcast. And per normal, as usual, once again, I guess, has not changed. I am Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
Yeah, all that stuff, Matt Trogdon.
And I'm Craig Lance.
You are the video gaming Craig Lance.
I am not the video gaming Craig.
Telling
there are
everybody,
a lot of people out there that play a whole lot more games
I'm going to
than me.
start buying you gamer t-shirts.
No.
And sending you to like gamer conventions to get the gamer news.
No, I'm good.
We got this gamer.net.
Gamer news.
The game we are talking about is 4 years old, just for reference. We are not up to date on the most current videos.
See, I couldn't have told you that. I'm so out of touch. So speaking of games, my husband, my Roger, finally last night downloaded a game I've been telling him I thought he would love based on rumors alone, but it's the Kingdom Hearts game. Mm-hmm. So they have a package deal on the PS4 that you can download like
1 and 2, I think.
2 and
1,
3
1.5 and 2.
Yeah, something like I don't know. But I woke up this morning to him playing that and using Goofy as a sidekick, which if I could have
killing people with key swords.
Yeah, I'd want it to be Goofy. Yeah. So if you had to play like a violent video game where you got to have one of those. Like Goofy or Mickey, who would you want as your sidekick? Because I would totally choose Goofy. Goofy would be my dude.
So I have to choose one of the main Disney characters that you're saying? Donald Duck.
Donald?
Yeah, see, Donald would probably be my choice too, just because his anger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Direct that.
Yeah, that I don't know if I could deal with like having
him screaming
the
at the enemies.
vocal equivalent of Gilbert Godfrey in my ear while I'm trying to murder. So I don't.
It would make you want to murder more.
I don't want Gilbert Godfrey to be my murder narrator. So that just seems like that would be what that is. So all right, we are here this week to talk about the comic books that we know and we love. For those of you who are new to the show, we want to welcome you because we're growing an audience all the time, and we really appreciate it. We love it. We love doing this. So what we are going to do today is just to give you a little sneak peek, a little preview, to give you a little roadmap, so to speak, of how the show's going to go. We are going to kind of talk about just a little brief glimpse into some of the books that we've been reading. We call it a short stack, kind of kind of like an appetizer, if you will, to get us going on talking about the comics. Then we are going to roundtable a fancy new comic that came out this week. It's a brand new #1. Hint, hint. It's from Marvel. Snicked, let you know what that is. But we are going to get kind of in depth with some of these things. And with that, inevitably comes spoilers, right? So you can't avoid it if you're going to talk about it. We don't want to ruin the experience for anybody. That's not what we're going to do. We would hate that. We hate when it happens to us. So we're giving you a fair warning. If you have not read Wolverine or any of the X books so far, you might want to hit the pause button, go catch up, and then come back and listen to it. So you don't get anything spoiled for you, because that's not cool, right? Nobody likes that.
It is not cool. No one wants to be spoiled. I agree with everything you said.
Thank you. I worked hard. That's all I've got for the episode. That's the extent.
Thanks for joining us. See you next week.
That's
Wolverine, good. Out. Bye. See you later.
So yeah, but
I got nothing bad.
Before we get into that, something kind of huge happened this week. Not in Marvel, but over in DC.
Yeah.
That is Mr. Longtime co-publisher and a pillar of DC Comics. Dan DiDio is out.
Yeah.
He was kind of fired.
or asked to leave or left on his own.
Well, so I mean, it was flat out fired. So I was reading some of the actual news behind it, and he was what they call fired for cause, and that cause was for creating a toxic work environment. I don't know there were no particulars, but I do know that no less than 4 of the top editors in DC's office have quit in the last year. And so
it shows.
For cause is for reason. So there's a lot of things that go into that. But I just was curious about your opinion on it.
Well, I'm never going to celebrate somebody getting fired or losing their job, or unless it's in November of this year. I'm not going to celebrate that, but changes have needed to been made at DC for quite some time now. They've occasionally had good stuff going on, but overall it's been very, very average in my opinion for a while. So I look at this as eliminating all the other reasons. It can't hurt but help DC overall.
Okay.
In my opinion right now. I think they're due for a change there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on the same note. I mean, I certainly don't celebrate the guy losing his job, but I am looking forward to the silver lining in this and what positive will come out of it.
I think that's where, I mean, like you said, both of you said, I can't get happy about anybody losing their livelihood, especially in that way. And with the
I can get happy about some people losing their job.
Some people, not in this particular case, but I do think that. Look, when it comes to comics, when it comes to anything that's art related, and art being subjective and art usually being timely, like it needs to be in the now and the here, there are things happening in comics abroad, in the entire spectrum of comics that are really, really cool. They're really, really changing, and you need editors, you need people in those top tiers to take notice of that and not keep comics in the spot that they liked it. It's kind of like, as we grow older, our music that we grew up with is always going to be the best music, and then we argue with the next generation about how their music sucks and ours was better, and inevitably 3 generations back they still think their music was awesome and our music sucks.
I've heard their music, they're wrong.
Oh man, I'm telling you.
But you need somebody who's tapped into the zeitgeist, so to speak, and I think from my perspective that DiDio, while I think he is an amazing ambassador for comics, and I know that he loves these characters and I know everything else, I think that he is rooted in an era that comics as a medium has passed, and he did not evolve with those times the way that he needed to in order to work out best for the company. So I'm saddened and I won't be surprised if you see him pop up in a big way somewhere else, because he's not through with this industry by any means. I think he's a fantastic writer. I think he's a well of brilliant ideas. I think kind of like when Bendis jumped over to DC. Bendis's books at Marvel had gotten stale because he'd been playing in the same playground for way too long. And I think DiDio has been in the same playground for a little bit long, and I'm excited to see what this opportunity allows him to do.
So, for sure. He's going to end up someplace else. He's not done, as you say. If nothing else, he'll just go back to writing comics, which he's really, really good at. So
I'm kind of curious to see who takes his spot.
I am too. Or
I'm very curious.
Yeah, I doubt it's just going to be Jim Lee by himself there. I'm sure they're going to replace Didio. So
be cool if they would get Karen Berger. Somebody else floated.
It's the first name I thought.
Somebody else floated that idea. I would love to see Karen Berger, but she's got her own Berger books with Dark Horse now. So
and one thing I did hear is that creators absolutely loved working with him.
Right.
The writers absolutely loved working with him. From different ones I follow, anyways. So it seems to me that the problem was an editorial and hire. So, that's okay. That sometimes a change is needed for everybody, and I hope he lands on his feet and finds something really, really good to do.
I do too.
And I hope DC gets really, really good again.
I do too.
I mean, it could be positive for both. Sometimes change helps everybody.
And we've said it before on the show. I love DC. I've got nothing against DC. It just seems to me like there's a few books that aren't rooted in Batman that I'm enjoying, but there's most of what
it's
they're
mostly
doing
Bat Family.
Bat Family stuff. So they've got to spread their wings on that a little bit.
They really do. They've got to get better across the board.
Which in my humble opinion, they're doing that with books like Green Lantern. They're doing that with some of their Black Label books. Which
the Black Label is the best stuff going on at DC right now, in my opinion, or consistently the best stuff.
Yeah, loving that stuff. So, all right, I am curious about what you guys have been reading this week. So let's drop some short stacks. We'll start with you, Craig.
Okay. First book I read was Bang #1 by Dark Horse Comics. And no, it's not a porn book. It's Matt Kent and Wilfredo Torres. Basically, they expand on the old myth if James Bond was a code name and not his real name. So the character in this, he thinks he's been the title character for the whole time, but then the villain reveals to him that, hey, guess what? You're really not. You remember this happened in 1962, but you're only 30 years old. How is that? So it's pretty cool play on that.
That's kind of an awesome meta concept.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So the other thing I read, or the next thing I read that I want to thank Matt for getting me back on, was Batman's Grave 1 through 5.
Nice.
Warren Ellis and Brian Hitch. I'm not going to go too deep into it because Matt's talked about it quite a bit. I mean, not wrongly quite a bit, but he's talked about it in the past. So there's one of the funniest Bat books I've read in a long time, which is saying something, but I'm not just enjoying it because it's funny. I'm enjoying it because it's also a good detective story, and there's a lot of violence in it. There's a lot going on in that book.
Yeah.
Last book I read was Guardians of the Galaxy #2. I mean, it's not the last book I read. It's the last one I'm talking about. Guardians of the Galaxy #2.
That's it. I'm done reading. Yeah. The last book I read.
I read 6 books.
Read them all, folks.
Al Ewing, Juan Cabal, Federico Blee. So I was pretty so-so on the issue #1, except for the end page. Issue #2 fucking killed it. It was so good. I loved issue #2. So I'm on this book now. I'm all in. Al Ewing's got me sold. Still got some complications with the art, but I'm all in on this book right now.
Yeah, so I didn't enjoy. I mean, I thought it was an okay book. The first one, I haven't read the second one, so because of that I didn't pick up the second one. I should have more faith in Al Ewing to be Al Ewing, and I am reminded that a lot of people thought that the first issue of Immortal Hulk was kind of meh, but then it took off and became Immortal Hulk. So I need to give this a second chance, just to see what he's doing.
I would at least read issue #2, and if you're not sold, then you're not sold.
Yeah.
But because that's was my plan. I was going to pick up issue #2, and I still had a meh feeling, I was going to move on.
It's got my 4th favorite Marvel character in it now at the end of that last issue. So
well, he's got a pretty big role in this issue.
He's got a big lots of things. So I hear.
Presumably.
Pants.
That's what She-Hulk says.
Not pants. He does not have big
those pants are some low-riding pants, man. Makes me uncomfortable.
Think Brad Pitt and Troy.
Oh, man. Dude.
Right above everything.
So I also read Guardians of the Galaxy #2. And yeah, same with Craig. This the second issue, I expected certain things to happen in the second issue that did not.
Yeah.
And some things definitely happened in the second issue I didn't expect.
Yeah.
So it really went a direction I didn't see. And issue number 3, I think you need to give this 3 issues because of what occurred in issue number 2.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and more than one thing. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how this plays out because it's set up for some pretty intense stuff to happen.
Yeah.
For several reasons. Also, I read from Marvel Marauders number 8 by Jerry Dugan, Stefano Caselli, and Edgar Delgado. The last 2 issues of Marauders have been really good.
I did
really
not
good.
get this week's read yet, but
man, this one. So there's a little. There's 1 or 2 pages where Iceman gets really angry and really dark, and it's pretty freaking metal, man. It was great. And last issue, Storm had a standout issue, and that Storm had a standout moment in issue number 7 that I've loved and I've been waiting on since the relaunch of the whole X universe. So it was X-Man's turn, or excuse me, it was Iceman's turn, and it was badass.
Nice. When he's written well, he's
he gets dark, and it's killer, man. So yeah, I definitely recommend Marauders. DC, I read based on Caleb's recommendation. I picked up the Batman Detective Comics Annual number 3.
Aww.
Yeah, from Peter J. Tomasi, Sumit Kumar, Romulo Fajardo Jr., and Eduardo Risso. I really, really like this book, man. This was cool.
I told you.
And now, why did I enjoy this annual
Why did
so
you
much?
enjoy this annual so
I enjoyed
much?
this annual so much because it was not connected to the regular story. I enjoyed this annual and it not being connected to the regular story because it was like an episode. It was like its own thing. And I'm not reading Detective Comics, so I thought, well, I can still pick up the annual because it's not part of the regular story. And I enjoyed it so much.
Did it fill you with joy?
It was great. And it was just a great story in general. It was, you know, of course, like you mentioned, it was about Alfred's past and his work as MI6
Alfred,
agent.
who is currently what in the DC universe?
It was so well done. It was nice to read this. It was just, of course, it reminded me of Warren Ellis's James Bond run.
Yeah, exactly.
Reminded me of that.
100%. Yes.
Just, same kind of interest level, same kind of great storytelling. And man, reading that Eduardo Risso story in the back now makes me ache for Eduardo Risso Batman stories.
You just long for it.
Dude, that was amazing.
Yeah, it's stunning.
It was so well done.
Isn't it great how these annuals can deliver that?
And it's
if
nice.
You just give yourself a chance.
It's nice
to read
because
them.
once a year they can drop these annuals on you and they be standalone and you can just kind of jump in if you feel like it, if you're maybe not on the regular.
Or they can charge you $8 for a book that you're not going to read.
Craig's gonna start throwing things at us pretty quick.
No, I'm good. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
So pick up so every once in a while, if you see an annual out there, kids, just try it because it may be a gem, and many times it is.
It might be.
See, in this case, it is. So
I've read enough of them to know that most of the time I don't enjoy them.
But this one you will.
Yeah, I'm sure I would.
You should read this one. Your boys are telling you it's good. Read it. It will make you like you're planting your flag. Like I can see it right now. You're like I will read some other bullshit before I read this book.
That Eduardo Risso story in the back is worth the price alone.
I'm sure it's a good book.
It was so good.
It's not that I'm like, opposed to the concept of annuals.
No.
I just have read enough.
I think you're opposed to the concept of annuals.
I'm opposed to the fact that I've read enough of them to know that I don't generally enjoy the annual.
No,
stories.
and we're obviously giving you shit, but I know exactly where you're coming from because it is very annoying when you read a book and it's got. Not only does it not tie into the main story, but it's got literally nothing to do with anything, and usually sometimes they can be poorly written. In this particular case, it ties into what's happening in the Batman world just enough to be relevant to what's going on. Like this is the type of annual that annual should be versus some of the other crap. And I'll say crap that we get that just is nothing. There's no point in it.
Well, to me, a lot of times they're filler books on we have a 5-week month. Let's throw in a annual. You can't tell me I'm wrong, Matt. You go back and look. Almost every time an annual is released, it's in a 5-week month.
So I read a comic book and I enjoyed it a lot.
Good.
It's called an annual.
All right. So
What did you read, Caleb?
I read a couple of books. I read several, and this is a shout
Were
out.
they all annuals?
No, they weren't. None of them, in fact, were. But
imagine that.
I want you and I have some kismet happening because we both read things this week based solely on the fact that Matt is the one who's like, dude, this is amazing. Like his enthusiasm for this book
bled over to you.
Yeah, and I had to catch up on it. So I am completely caught up on this point of Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen. I binged all the issues I hadn't read. This is Matt Fraction, Steve Lieber, and Nathan Fairbairn. Gem of a book. There is nothing about this book I don't love. And you're talking about funny moments with Batman.
Yeah.
Steve Lieber, like I love it. I would read it if it didn't have words. I love this book. It is so gorgeous. Steve Lieber is just a machine. His depiction of these characters are very much rooted out of like almost like it's in a way it's like the Hanna-Barbera style art from like Birdman. That they had, or man, whatever his character was, like he takes that school of cartooning.
Harvey Birdman.
Harvey Birdman, and brings it here, and it's just, it's so pretty. It's awesome. Plus the comedy. There's this one moment where like Batman wants people to think he's funny. He needs people to like acknowledge that he's like low key hilarious. So he's got one of those arrows that's actually a headband that you put over his head. So he's sitting there wearing it and going, I too am hilarious.
Yeah.
Like it's great.
It's funny, man.
Seems like a Drax moment from Guardians.
It was, but it's even better coming from Batman.
Yeah, for sure.
I kicked off the 4th omnibus of Lone Wolf and Cub this week. Of course, this is the ongoing, or not ongoing, it's done now, but this is
a huge blind spot for me. I need to resolve at some point.
Amazing. Like it has earned its spot in the
annals of comic book history.
Yeah, it's just in the canon. Like to me, it is some premier visual storytelling. Again, Keizu Koke and Koseki Kojima. And for the 4th omnibus, the political structure in Japan that they've kind of been like avoiding and walking around with, he's always been worried about it catching up with them. The corrupt houses and the Yakuza gangsters are starting to make their move a little bit, and they're starting to try to close in on Ito. So that's where this really kicks off. And up to this point, there's been a little bit like you get that there's an overarching story, but it's been a lot of like villain of the week kind of things. And this one, you're starting to see some of the threads really.
I really like when a
together.
book does that, when you kind of get all these different things happening, but then, oh hey, guess what? All of this has really been tied in together, and you just didn't know it. So. That's always when it's done well.
No, and see, Mandalorian did that, and that's where like when we were talking about Mandalorian, I was like, it reminds me so much of Lone Wolf and Cub, or those old Western movies,
spaghetti Western.
Yeah, that you
stuff.
get the Leone movies,
Sergio
Leone movies that really do that well, and he gets his stuff from old samurai movies, so it's just. It's so good.
There's nothing new. It's all. I mean, what did Shakespeare say? There's only 5 stories or 7 stories, and it's just how you tell them.
Yep, and make them entertaining.
Your own,
and look at the craft. And then last, but certainly not least, because of the book that we decided we were going to roundtable this week after I read it and just loved it. I went up in my little comics cave that I have, and I dug through some back issues, and I pulled out Marvel Comics Presents number 72 through 84.
That's on my list of ones to talk about.
Oh, and we're going. Yeah. And I read those, and just since I won't get into it, but since that was something we're going to be interested in, it is the Weapon X story, and I reread the Weapon X story this week.
One of the most solid.
And I'll leave it at that, so we can talk about it.
Yes, we will. Yes.
If you haven't picked up on the not so subtle hints, this show is going to kind of be all about Wolverine this week.
Yeah, Roundtable Wolverine, and then it's going to be Chaos Wolverine.
So this is one of the episodes that Matt gets his way, and he's solid.
We're giving it all to Matt this week. Not only is it Chaos, it's Wolverine Chaos.
You know, when you say that you're giving it all to Matt,
whatever it takes, whatever it takes to make Matt happy,
pleases me in my visual head.
Brings out my best creativity when I'm pleased.
I like that we allow sexual harassment on this show between each other. All right,
Whatever it takes to get the job done.
y'all ready to talk about some Wolverine?
Just don't sue me later.
Nah, we signed waivers
okay.
for each other. No one else, but for each other.
We all have NDAs.
SFG NDA. We this week gathered around collectively and decided that number one, because we thought it was going to be good, that we would read Wolverine #1, the new issue, new series.
Man, were we wrong?
I'm calling bullshit.
Oh yeah,
but
bullshit.
Also, one of the other reasons that we decided to do that this week is because this came out on a holiday.
Yeah, a national like holiday that everybody should get that day off.
A day ingrained on the calendar.
Yes.
This came out on our dear friend Matt's birthday.
What?
So it was a wonderful birthday from Marvel straight to Matt because he's such a huge Wolverine fan. And
then our local comic book store didn't put it in his box.
Hey, it's true. That's a true story.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Oh, he whiffed it.
Yeah.
He did it. He had to have done that on purpose.
He swears he didn't because I said those words. You did this on purpose.
There was enough on the wall that Matt did not miss out.
Nah, and he was quick to get it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Quick to remedy that situation. So this book, this is a huge book. And so the only complaint I have about this book, literally, the only complaint I have about this book is the fact that it cost me about $8.
Yeah, but you got 3 books worth of material.
Right. You got, was it close to 60-something pages?
I counted the pages. There's like 74 pages in the book, but actual story pages are 62.
Okay. You get 60. Like, it is a hefty price tag on this book. It is... But it's more
Which
than just
I
a
don't
regular
love,
comic.
but when you're going to charge me that much, give me the content to back it up.
Yeah.
Give me the page count to back it up. And they did.
They did. And you actually get almost two issues in one with this, and it's separated to be that.
Yeah.
And
And
this
you get 2 oversized issues.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Of wonderfulness.
Yeah.
Both of these issues were written by one Mr. Benjamin Percy. The first kind of story, if we consider that it being separated, is drawn by Adam Kubert and is colored wonderfully by Frank Martin. And then the second one, not to be overlooked, is again Benjamin Percy, but also this one was drawn by Victor Bogdanovic with colors by the great Matthew Wilson, who continues to just notch his name into the wall of great colorists, just doing stunning work. So this book opens up, the first one, and this is the one, like I said, drawn by Kubert. Wolverine finds himself woken up, and he's kind of mostly...
Finds himself woke.
Yeah, well, he's kind of just mostly dead when he wakes up, and he's in this giant pile of snow surrounded by the bodies of all of his X-Force companions. Something has obviously not worked out the way they wanted it to. They appear to have been killed by Wolverine himself. Like, this is a moment that you get, and we've seen it before, right, where Wolverine accidentally
Goes feral and kills everybody.
right. But he's sitting there as he wakes. He's healing. He's kind of groggy. How did he get here? What happened? What's going on in his life that would make this? Because everything has kind of been hunky dory for Wolverine up to this point, as hunky dory as Wolverine's life can get.
All we've seen him is smiling and loving and
Right.
having a good time, other than his X-Force adventures, which are a little violent.
Well, as it should be, but he
Yeah.
can do both. That's the kind of person he is. In fact, that's where the book goes next. You kind of get this flashback moment, and it snaps back in time, and it shows Wolverine on Krakoa, and he's there. He's being Logan the teacher. He's being Logan the babysitter. Logan the hide and seek champion, and he's working with all these kids that we saw that in House of X Powers of 10, where it showed him just in the meadow playing with these children and being almost
and happy.
for the first, like, we don't see that from him too much.
Yeah.
And he really is loving it. He's enjoying his life. And while he's doing all this, playing with the kids, Marvel Girl comes out to see what's going on, and of course the kids can't find him because Wolverine is
He's Wolverine.
He is the hide and seek champion. And so she does her thing because she's telepathically connected to him, and so she sucks him out of his hiding spot. And the kids are all happy we found you. And one of them's like, "Hey," because as he's flying out of his hiding spot, he says a cuss word, and the kids are like, "No cursing."
Yeah.
It was excellent. But the reason she was out there looking for him is because our friend Kate Pride, not Kitty anymore, has landed. She's somewhat of a pirate these days, and she is looking for Wolverine, and he's keeping her waiting, and this is not something that Kate needs.
Well, and
in her
she
life.
can't get onto Krakoa, really. She can't enter into the main. She can be in the harbor, but she can't.
Yeah.
So she's kind of stuck on her boat and kind of aggravated, and
she can't go look for him.
Yeah.
And so, and one of the reasons that she's there is because what is she up to these days? She's smuggling things. Because like I said, she's a pirate, and so one of the things that she is smuggling is specifically for Wolverine, which is really shitty booze.
Yeah, she's bringing him back bad bourbon,
as he's requested.
Yeah, it's
not bourbon. It's Canadian whiskey.
That's right.
Yeah, it's just bad. It's like it's worse than Crown Royal.
Yeah,
she's bringing him back.
And she's doing it at his behest, and she's getting as bad as he requests. And yeah, it's fantastic
because that's what he needs in his life,
right?
And so he gets there, and he's talking to her, but there's something else. Like there was more than just that, and so she brings him into her ship, and she sits him down. And she's like, "Hey, like there's some shit going on that I need to make you aware of because again, like you said, he's leading X-Force still.
That's right, right.
And so the bad news that she's got to tell him is. It plays into what Hickman is doing with the overall universe and with Krakoa, just period. One of the things the mutants have is they have cultivated this flower that's on Krakoa, and they are selling it to the humans, to all the other human nations, as kind of it's a healthcare, it's a medicine, it's got extremely strong medicinal purposes, and they're cultivating this on a field in Mars that may or may not
extends their life and cures disease.
Yeah, it's a wonder drug.
Yeah.
And like I said, they're cultivating this on Mars, and I think Multiple Man's the guy who's over that.
I don't remember.
It looks like Multiple Man. But somebody's been skimming a little off the top. Somebody's been like some of these petals from these flowers are going missing, and it's escalated. Like it's
insane to me, not to cut you off, but how much they know down to the petal. How many petals they should have on these flowers. That's how in control of this they are.
They just had inventory must be wonderful to do on that place. But they've noticed that and it's escalating. So it's gone from just being petals to now an entire shipment has gone missing, and they got to investigate it. And what they know is that these petals, this drug this medicinal drug that they're using, the flowers are being used to make a street drug now. And again, that happens. We see that in the real world all the time. And this street drug is called pollen, except it's being made. It's deadly. Like it's almost laced with something. Like it's causing a lot of hubbubaloo and a lot of harm inside the world. And the drug cartels. I know, I love it. The drug cartels are tapping into this. And one drug cartel in particular, I mean, aptly named. I don't, who knows if it was named before or after, but it's the flower cartel. They are kind of taking over the drug game with this. They've kind of cornered the market, which is, of course, not only caught the attention of the mutants, it's garnered the attention of the American agencies that kind of control the drug war, specifically the CIA. And one agent in particular is this man named Agent Bannister, and he's kind of a hippie. He's kind of like this Weekend at Bernie's style detective that wears a lot of floral Hawaiian shirts, kind of seems like he's easygoing, but he's really good at his job. And, he spent lots of time sunk in as an agent to the cartels. He's back in the U.S. He's working on U.S. soil again, out from being undercover because his daughter has leukemia. And this drug is something that as far as the mutants are marketing it, it's a wonder drug, and it's going to help her through her leukemia. Right. So it's extra personal to him that somebody is stealing it and or misusing it to make a really deadly drug. Because when these things happen, what happens? They get banned.
Well, one thing we found out during this too was that there's actual a waiting list to get this drug. Mm-hmm. So it's not they're not just overflowing the market with it. They're releasing it a little at a time.
Yeah.
Presumably, or it grows so slow that it takes a while to get out. So,
and again, like you said, this pisses him off. He's watching his kid, he's watching his kid suffer, and while these assholes are stealing it and misusing it and killing people with it, and so he's particularly not happy. Also, while all this is going around, centered around this idea of the drugs, there has started to spring up cults among the humans that worship mutants. They kind of recognize the mutants as gods, so to speak. And, it's gone more than just celebrity worship at this point. Like, to the point, some of them it is just celebrity worship. Like, these guys are awesome. They're powerful. We're going to worship them like gods. Which, you can imagine is how you get people like Apocalypse being worshipped on a grand scale. The other ones have taken a different avenue of appreciation for the mutants. And not only do they worship the mutants as gods, they think that in order to, they offer themselves as receptacles for the mutants' love to bear their children if they want to. And some of them have even gone so far as wanting to, they think that like consuming a mutant, literally eating a mutant, will elevate them to some type of genetic enlightenment, maybe, so to speak.
And how do they distinguish themselves? Because that was one of my favorite parts.
So what they do, these cultists have started carving X's into different parts of their body, like they're self-mutilating, including, like, I think one of the most popular places, as shown by the book, is on their mouths. They just take razor blades and they make X scars on the middle of their face because they're really functional adults. They're living life well.
Making really good choices, life decisions.
Well, they catch up onto this trail, of course, because Wolverine goes and gets his X-Force pals. He's like, all right, come on, guys, we got a job to do. Let's go work this. And they, it's who you think. If you're not reading X-Force, you go check that book out. And they
also written by Benjamin Percy.
Yeah, they bounce over and they get into the meat of it, like, because so what happens is they have gotten some intel and they know about where they need to pop up, and so they use a, I'm not going to spoil it, but they use a kind of well-known teleporter to get them right there, and they pop up in a room full of these cultists, and it's a bad place to be, and so they have to
exact.
Yeah, they have to fight their way out of this. And when they do that, it's a breadcrumb trail, right? Like, they learned, because these cultists are using the drug, and they learn where maybe these cultists are getting it from, which leads them to Russia, which is a place that the mutants can't get to again by their little Krakoa gates. They have to sneak their way in, and who better to do that than Wolverine? He goes to the Mafia Don and corners a Mafia Don who's over this, and what he finds out is that leading this, getting the flowers, getting the petals, getting the drug, and cultivating this, I don't know what you call it, this market, this new influx of mutant dope, is a mutant themselves. I'm assumedly, but it's he calls her the white woman,
the pale girl,
same thing. White woman, pale girl.
White woman, pale girl.
Same business. And she is apparently a really, really powerful psychic mutant, because she can get into people's minds and make them do things that they wouldn't normally do. I mean, there's one scene where the detective he's looking at a crime scene that they assume is just one cartel hitting another cartel, and he's like, that's not what this is. Like, that guy stabbed himself in the head with a screwdriver.
Right.
This motherfucker took a test tube and headbutted it. Like these people, they
killed themselves.
Which ties it right back in. Might be why Wolverine wakes up in the snow, surrounded by his dead friends, not knowing what happens. And at the end of the book, into this particular story, he wakes up. He's trudging through the snow just in time to kind of come face to face with this detective. They've both done their detective work. A lot of the story parallels them together, and they're gonna have to meet up and figure out what's what.
Could you imagine finding Wolverine in that state?
That'd be terrifying.
I mean, based on his history, I think you've got a better chance of finding him in that state than not.
Well, yes, yeah.
Just imagine finding anybody who's look like they got 95% ate by a bear that just gets up. It's just like, hey, can you give me 5? Yeah. And that's what Wolverine does. The second story goes in a little bit of a different direction. It doesn't tie in to this story almost at all. In fact, it gives you more of an inner look at instead of being outside the world, this looks at what's happening inside Krakoa. And this is the story that's drawn by Victor Bogdanovic and colored by Matthew Wilson. And short scope on this story, Krakoa and the mutants at Krakoa have essentially put out blanket immunity. Any mutant, good. But I mean, look, they're being like half the council is made up of people who have just tried to destroy the Earth.
I mean, Apocalypse is on the council
in a fancy suit, and I respect that. But there are some really terrible. I mean, they've still got Sabretooth stuck in a hole somewhere. But there are some really terrible mutants that we have not necessarily seen. That there's some questions about. One of which comes through the gate, tries to get immunity, and happens to pop through the gate right when Wolverine is there, which is poor timing on his part, good timing on somebody else's part, maybe. But that's Omega Red. Long time. One of my, not the favorite, but one of my favorite Wolverine antagonists. And he is just covered in blood. He looks like he's just gotten the shit beat out of it, which is, he's Omega Red. Like, who beats up Omega Red?
Other than Wolverine?
I mean, this is not something you like. Dude's buff. He's swole. He's powerful.
Wolverine's woke and Sabretooth or Omega Red is swole.
That's the book. That's the buddy cop book I want. Woke Wolverine, swole Omega Red. Give me that. Matt Fraction. I want Matt Fraction writing that book. But Wolverine's not about this. Like, yes, he's down with like 99% of the immunity being given to everyone, but he sees Omega Red. He knows Omega Red is a mass murderer. He's insane. He does not need to be there. He is not okay with this at all. And so he jumps. Like, he's going right for the jugular on this one. And then just so happens Magneto's floating around nearby and stops him midair and just like, hey, dude, like, we've got rules. We agreed to this. And Wolverine's like, it's Omega Red.
Quit fucking with me, Magneto.
Just like, this is unfair. I need to.
He's not redeemed.
He needs murdering. I happen to be good at murdering.
I'm the murder guy.
He's the best he is at what he does. But they've extended this immunity to all, and Magneto demands to see it work. Like, he's sticking by these rules in this particular moment, which is hilarious because we just saw him bend those rules for somebody else earlier.
Yeah.
In a previous book last week. But sometimes if you make your rules, you get to choose how they get applied. Apparently, but he also
works in American politics too.
He also makes a very good point. He's like, look, that blood that he's covered in, that Omega Red is like covered in, a lot of that, you're right, not his own. A lot of it is like he's not in good shape, and about that time Omega Red just kind of falls over because, look, Magneto has got the perfect timing. Like, he just makes things happen.
He probably pulled all the iron from his blood and made him pass out.
But what he does, and he looks at Wolverine, he's like, what I need you to do is I need you to jump over and find out what just fucked up Omega Red, and I'm not giving you a choice about it. So he slingshots him through the portal, through this gate, and what he gets to is pure carnage in Russia, because again, Russia is not a state that's cruel with Krakoa. Like, they've got tanks and guards and stuff with machine guns guarding these gates so that any mutant that pops through, they can just ice them that quick. He throws Wolverine through there, and Wolverine's like, fuck, this is gonna hurt. But what he gets to on the other side of the gate is just kind of carnage. The soldiers are not there, nobody's shooting at him. It just looks like somebody's wrecked the place, and he hears something in the trunk of a car, and he goes and opens it up, and there's this emaciated, possibly a child person that's just like, did you see them? Or like, and then he just kind of goes away. He just kind of
is that what we call death now? Kind of goes away.
Yeah, he just kind of fades, and Wolverine is very confused. Long story short, and this is a genius move on Percy's part. If you read the first couple of arcs of Avengers, then you know that what Jason Aaron did in that book had this really awesome moment with this character who is a force in and of its own. He leads an entire army. He's got a shadow nation. He's none other than Vlad. He's Dracula. And
Wait, so you're saying that the X-Men universe is tied to the overall universe?
Uh-huh.
So Hoxpox was an event that affected everything.
No. Hoxpox was an introduction. It was a miniseries. Now, if this were leading into this particular book, which does tie into those things, could be, but that wasn't. You don't get.
Stay tuned for our next throwback.
How do you make that jump from like 3 books to call that an event? Like, okay, so this book spurred into X-Men, which spurred into Wolverine. So
that's what events do.
An event.
Exactly. Yeah. That is what they do.
They connect those things.
But this didn't. This book is connecting those dots. It had nothing to do with Hoxpox. Anyway,
this book's
the Avengers left Mr. Dracula alone.
Yeah.
Sequestered.
Yeah. in prison,
so to speak, but leading his own, like, in a perfect position to lead his own vampire army in the middle of Siberia where no one else could find him, and that's what he's been doing.
Yeah.
He's been growing his army, he's been amassing them, and now they're about to spill over and fuck up Russia, which, to be fair, I'm okay with. That's just me. Look, vampires in Siberia, who doesn't want that?
The Siberians?
Look, it's cold there. They can, anyway. And so they have to start trying to figure out what's going on. So, of course, Wolverine, he's on his P's and Q's. Like, he's good at what he does. He catches the scent, so to speak. He starts tracking down the vampires. He comes to this little town. Not so sure what's happened. There's a woman who wants to sell him some flowers. He's like, yeah, nah, I'm good. Goes about his business. Finds more vampires, kills more vampires. It's what he does. Realizes, connects the dots, but kind of gets overwhelmed because there's too many of them. And just the last moment, this figure pops up and starts whipping all kinds of vampire ass. And it's a woman who sold him the flowers, or who wanted to sell him the flowers.
It was not Blade.
And she is not Blade. She's a vampire hunter. She's an order of these people who have been long trying to destroy the vampires. Also, we find out that Wolverine can't speak French, which is a thing that we all kind of assumed, but we weren't necessarily sure of. Hey, he's Canadian, so he speaks a little bit of French, right? And so that's where this.
Well, I like when she tells him, "Don't try to speak my language. You
no.
ugly it up."
Yeah,
that was hilarious.
It's grotesque and not pretty. And so not only do they have all of these things happening with the drug war over outside the world, just to make sure that it's weird and creepy and funky, they've now got to worry about a vampire uprising being led by Dracula, which is going to start affecting the mutants universe and the universe at large. Which could tie into a crossover event where all these characters come together and do something, which I think is cool. Centered around the vampires.
Yeah. A crossover event would be cool. It'd be almost as cool as a regular event.
Were that to happen, yes. Should we get that in the X universe? And we might. Who knows? We can see what that's going to happen. So let's talk about this. Do I even need to ask?
Thumbs up.
Yeah. I mean, full erect. If we're going back to that ranking, it's thumbs up. It's totally love this book. Everything about it, both. Actually, like the second story a little bit better than the first from the story standpoint, but I love both of the stories. That's like saying 1A, 1B.
Yeah.
They're both fantastic. I just, I kind of like vampire shit.
No, for sure. I smiled reading this book in a way that I haven't smiled reading a comic in a while.
It took me a good half hour to read it, and I loved every fucking minute of it.
I lost track of time.
Yeah.
And I felt like I flew through this book because the pacing was on point. I was so immersed in the story that it sucked me in the way that a comic book is not done in a long time. Like, I felt like I was in this book for a little bit while I was reading it, and completely lost track of time. 62 pages flew by for me, and that doesn't happen a lot, especially in a book that's wordy like this.
Yeah.
Because this book was not...
it's not just all action.
No.
Yeah, there's a lot of shit going on.
Some good exposition in this book.
The way Percy is writing Wolverine in X-Force, and now based on these two stories, and he's quickly becoming one of my favorite Wolverine writers. I mean, now granted, we don't have enough material to say that yet, but if he continues on the way he is, he's nothing but love for the dude and the way he's writing Wolverine.
He's doing a great job of echoing the voices that have written him before. Like there is some Larry Hama in this. There is some Barry Windsor Smith in the way he's writing it. There's some of these guys who have these solo Wolverine series that really landed the mark on the voice. He's using a lot of that. You can tell he's gone and done his homework, and he's stylistically carrying a lot of that over for the voice and the dialogue. Yeah, and it's just winning.
It's nothing but praise from me.
Yep.
Art, story, colors. It was a beautiful book. It was beautifully told.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even find a negative to talk about in this
book. The price point?
That, I mean, and I don't really consider it a negative when I get that much story for it. Yeah. So, I mean, again, no one wants to pay that much for a comic book. But if you're going to do it, give me the 62 pages to.
Yeah. I still consider it, even though I love this book, I do still consider it a negative because
It's going to turn some people off from buying it.
For $3 or $4 more, I can get 5 issues and a trade paperback from Image of story that might be just as good. Like you get almost 100 more pages worth of material for $10.
Wouldn't have Wolverine in it.
But it wouldn't have Wolverine in it. That's
It
fair.
wouldn't be 100 more pages. 5 issues would be 110 pages.
Yeah. Well, that's true. You only get like 40
more.
pages.
You would get for another $4 or $5 for another third of it. Of what you paid, you would get another third of material.
No, that's fair.
And it wouldn't have Wolverine in it.
And it wouldn't have. I mean, honestly, it's about on price for one of the trade paperbacks for the amount of content you got, page count versus what you paid. I think if there's a negative to the price point, it's that it's going to turn some people off from buying the first issue.
Yeah.
Because they're just not going to pay that much for a comic.
Or that it extends to just the price of comics, period.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Barry Windsor Smith. I had to back up for a minute. Adam Kubert was the star for me in this book. I know you loved, Craig, you said you loved the second story because you loved the vampires and stuff.
I love the story aspect of it. I think the art was better in the first story.
Adam Kubert, it's been a long time since I've read a new book with Adam Kubert art in it, but it was gorgeous. The man did not miss a beat. He's not one of those artists that kind of gets like he still feels in this book at least strong and fresh. Like there were some things that he did that I've never seen him do before. And with Frank Martin coloring him, you get that in a lot of the parts you get that pale color palette that just really makes it stand out. It's really strong. His layouts that he did, this one, something that we've complained about in other books. I think, to be fair, I think you guys have complained about it more than me with Tom King, where he does a lot of the 9-panel grids. You get a double-page spread in this. It's like a 16-panel grid.
I don't mind it as
well done.
I don't mind it as part of a book. It gets old when it's all a book.
When it's every page. Yeah.
And that's all I have ever meant by that. In fairness to Tom King, those books that he did that in were good books, so it's hard to bitch about it. So,
but also you get the page where it's he's using circular panels. Just the way that he laid out the story in this, it's not just.
I don't think layouts get enough credit.
They don't.
We talk about art a lot, but we don't always talk about how the page is laid out to draw your eye to the next relevant thing. And to me, that's as important of a part of the comic as anything else.
Oh, it is. To me, that's the science behind it. Because it doesn't, unless it's just, panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, panel 4, unless it's literally walking you through, like some panels can, and they can do that. Like they have almost a analog guided view. When you take a page or a set of pages that are not standard panels, they're not linear, they're doing different things.
Right.
And the artist, he holds your hand in a way that you don't even know it. He guides you from where you're supposed to go to the next.
Well, because you may not notice it when a layout is great.
You notice it when it's bad.
But you do notice it because we're all veteran comic book readers, but we've all read those books where it's like, okay, what panel's next? Where do I go next?
Or when you read the wrong word balloon because it's in the wrong... Which there was one spot in this that I did jump to the wrong word balloon because the word balloon was higher and in the center of the page of where you were supposed to go next. That, to me, is the only snafu I got. And I very quickly realized, I'm supposed to read that first.
Yeah.
That was...
It's much better than when you read a half of a page going, wait, this just feels disjointed. And then you look at I was supposed to read the other half as I went. Yeah.
Well, something that was not in this book that I wasn't surprised by, but I guess I appreciated. There was no token splash page of Wolverine, and a lot of artists would be very tempted to make a token splash page of Wolverine, if for no other reason that they could turn around and sell that for a lot of money.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think...
especially in a number 1 issue.
Yes.
You know what? I expected, honestly, and I expected Bogdanovic to do that. I didn't necessarily expect that from Kubert because Kubert doesn't need... He's already had his Wolverine moment. And I think he's having another one right here. So it doesn't surprise me that he didn't. But yeah, I really expected Bogdanovic to do that. I think what they gave us, instead of that splash page moment, are some really amazing, corners. There's the one scene from the issue where he was playing hide and seek and he's got the kids wrapped around his legs, like to me that like I want that art. It just and again that's part of the trick of making you go where they want your eye to go.
That little bit of the story at the beginning with him playing hide and seek with the kids was just a fun moment.
Yeah.
Wolverine has been a babysitter in comics for a long time now. I mean, he raised Kitty Pryde. He's been this guy for a long time that takes the kids under his wings, and there's nothing surprising about that.
No.
And the fact that he's just having so much fun doing it is just, it's great. It's just a little nod to who Wolverine has become in the comics over time.
It's not new. It's character evolution. But
Yeah.
one of my favorite runs that focuses on the school is Wolverine and the X-Men.
Yeah. Mine as well.
Where he's leading Xavier, like he's leading Xavier's school for
It's
gifted
Jean
young.
Grey school
Yeah.
when he's reading it.
I like that. It's more than just it makes him a person. And I
It
like
turns
that
him from a
Wolverine-
killing machine to somebody with some emotion and it gives him depth, in my opinion, which leads to some of the other stuff we're going to talk about in the chaos, because there's so much of that ties into who he is as a character.
I think for me, what it does, and what I appreciate the fact it does, is it gives him a different form of motivation. So for a long time, and still in a lot of ways, they recycle it and revisit it. But Wolverine's motivation is his history. It's his past that, a lot of times he doesn't know. It's these, it's Oriko, it's Yukio, it's what happened in Japan, it's Madripoor, it's these...
Mariko?
Mariko, excuse me. It's these moments in his history that he doesn't have a handle on that motivates him to do what he does. And in a lot of ways, it's similar to the motivation of Frank Castle. Not the same, but there's some parallels there. And when you get him inside the school and you give him this attachment to the kids, to being a teacher, it focuses on his future and not his past. It's the motivation is his future. It's the future of his family.
It's an evolution of the character, as you said earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, we've have almost 50 years of this character now, 60 years of this character. If we were still writing the same stories, we would all be bored of it.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I still want violent, gonna just fucking mangle people Wolverine, which you get, but if the motivation behind that was the same as it was 60 years ago,
Yeah.
we'd be bored with it. You've got to evolve these characters.
Yeah.
And
they've done a great job, and they're continuing to.
Yeah.
Before we dive into just the broad swath of Wolverine-dom,
Yeah.
so to speak, there were a lot of cool variant covers
Yeah.
that came out. Which ones did you guys get?
I got the A and the B cover, the two
Okay.
main covers. I see that you got the Scotty Young one. That's a nice cover.
Which one was the A and the B cover? Because
Matt's got, I don't know who the artists are on them. One's the kind of the tribute to the Wolverine #1. And then the other one, I'm going to have to go look.
was it the confetti one? Did you get the party?
That's
the one
he's got right there.
Okay, yeah, there was that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't do variants,
Yeah.
so I don't know.
Did you? I mean, but did one grab your? I'm asking. That basically, what I'm saying is, what does it look like? The covers that you guys.
I didn't look at them. I don't even know.
Remember?
Okay. Well, I got the Scotty Young variant. It's part of his like his baby X-Men line. It shows Wolverine sitting in a little blow up pool next to a smiling tree, and he's sipping a drink out of a coconut.
I want you to know Matt specifically pulled that one out for you.
This one? Mm-hmm. He's a good guy.
Not this Matt.
The other Matt.
Yeah,
this Matt's also a good guy.
Yeah,
But our local
comic book store.
which
Matt.
where is that?
Kapow Comics on Kill Avenue in Sherwood, Arkansas.
Yeah, it is. Pay those bills.
Yeah, it is.
So, all right, Matt.
Our one and only sponsor.
Yeah, that's it at this point. Free rent. Matt, take it over, buddy. I'm handing you the baton. Run with
So
it.
we're going. Well, so before we move on this book, some standout. This one standout moment that I really liked is when he walks into the Russian mobsters and tells them that you tell me what I want to know and I won't kill you.
Yeah.
Well, not today anyway. I really appreciated that, and I freaking love the way Kubert drew Logan. Here, just loved it, man.
See, that was what got me, and it's nothing against Bogdanovic. I think Bogdanovic is an amazing artist, and he did gorgeous work. And if he had been the only artist in this book, I would be singing his praises from here to next Tuesday. But when you have to follow what Kubert did on this book, like that's tough doings, man. And again, it's the whole thing is gorgeous. There's no standpoint, but man, Kubert just. Whew.
I mean, I got no complaints on either sets of art, but also in that same scene when they pull the guns on him, he's like, "That's not going to do what you think. It's going to hurt a little bit, but it's not."
I like that he was just like,
that's not quoted, but
guys, relax. If I wanted you to be dead, you'd be dead
you'd be dead
already.
already. Yeah,
just chill out already.
Yeah.
So
we're moving on to the chaos section.
Let's talk about some shit.
All right. So starting with the chaos sections, where do we begin? Where would you like to begin, Craig? This was your.
Yeah, I mean, let's start with some of our favorite stories. I would say, some of the things that drew you into Wolverine.
So overall, like, I'll just start with what drew me to the character and has from day one. The characteristics of the character that I appreciate the most and are pretty consistent with my favorite characters overall, but the fact that he's dangerous and he's cynical, that he's dependable in the worst situations. If you're going into a really bad situation, you're going to pick him first.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, there's very few people you're going to think of before you're going to think of him if the X-Men are going into the most dangerous situation they can. I really like that he's, what do they call him, 5'4" in continuity or whatever. So he's always underestimated by the uninitiated. I've always really liked that aspect of the character. It just makes it's something that makes him special, among a team or within a universe of people that are 6'5", 275 pounds, and or Adonises, or gorgeous women, and you've got this 5'4" stocky,
Stinky,
hairy man who's not traditionally attractive, who smokes and drinks.
And he doesn't usually refer to him as smelly.
Yeah, he always does. He's on the surface, he's repulsive. In the middle, mixed in with all these very attractive people that are more, basically represent somewhat of the moral high ground. Mm-hmm. That's always fascinated me that this character functions within that universe. And of course, we have, by and large, Roy Thomas to thank for that. Yeah. He basically said, I want you to design a character around the animal Wolverine. Yeah. Handed that to Len Wein and said, I want him to be short, with a short temper and pretty violent. And then Len Wein took that and designed this character with...
He designed the persona, but I mean, Herb Trimpe designed the character.
No. Really? John Romita Sr. designed the character. Herb Trimpe illustrated him for the first time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was a team effort of Len Wein and Romita Sr. to develop the personality is what Len Wein, developed as a whole.
I always attributed the look to Herb Trimpe. Just because he was the one who drew the Hulk 181.
No, that design was Romita Sr.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So for me, of course, my introduction was in the, X-Men books and so forth back before, I took a period of time off of comic books. And specifically the 90s. Well, it was my age at that time too, but 80s X-Men books. But I remember playing the Sega X-Men game with Wolverine in it. Yeah. Well, and you could switch back and forth between the different mutants as you needed to. And I played Wolverine Wolverine and Gambit back and forth was who I switched back and forth in that game. When you needed long distance firepower, it was Gambit. And when you needed somebody that could take a beating and keep on going, it was Wolverine. And for a video game to get his character that correct, which that game did, it made me a huge Wolverine fan. That video game made me a huge Wolverine fan.
As far as one of my favorite representations of the character outside the comics for a long time was the Marvel versus Capcom game.
Yeah.
Wolverine in that was amazing. Yeah. If you remember, when you hit start fight, he's crouched down and he's like pulsating with ready to. Dude,
he's got that Mortal Kombat swag,
and he's just. I mean, that is amazing. I felt like they freaking nailed his character in that game,
and that game still holds up. If
you man, it does. It's
really
crazy good.
Yeah. So to me, and then he kind of, as Matt said, he's such the anti-hero. Because he's got this such sordid past. He's been through all this shit. He's been a bad guy, not of his own volition, but he has been a bad guy. He's been used to do bad things. And now you've got that redemption in him. He wants to be a better person than he is. And sometimes he fails. And that's okay. Sometimes it's okay to show your heroes failing.
Yeah.
And he's... legit my number 2 or number 3 favorite at Marvel.
Yeah.
Always has been. Just absolutely love the character when he's written well. He just is the best there is at what he does.
Yeah.
So what you just said is like he's one of the best characters when he's written well. I don't, as far as the catalog of X-Men, I don't love Wolverine. I think the way that you guys or a lot of other people love Wolverine because he's been written poorly a lot throughout.
It has
and I've read a lot of those books, and that's not taking anything away from what happens when he is written well, because when he's written well, the thing I love about him is he is one of the most flexible characters that Marvel has, because they can throw him into so many situations, because what you have is a very rigid outline of a character, somebody who, attitude, and arguably it's taken decades to really bend his motivations and stuff and his personality, but most of that is just as steel as his bones. But you take that and you can throw it into so many environments and so many plot points that really allows him to do different things, whether it is a noir story or a detective crime story or just a murder story.
Well, I'm gonna go out on a limb, and I'm gonna say that most of the time that you've read him, when it's been poorly written, has been in a team book.
Some, yeah.
When his best material comes from solo Wolverine stories.
No, yeah, I'll agree. I'll wholeheartedly agree with that. That being said, there have been some moments where, like I said, you need to be a talented writer to really take off with a Wolverine character with this book, because he is he's both a rigid personality and a flexible being that you can put in any kind of plot. You can do so much with him.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That so many people don't know what to do with him, and they get so wrapped up into what they think he has to be that they lose focus of how to make him work in some situations. I mean, there's been some really great moments, like he was in Madripoor and, hunting down, like this is not the first issue or the first story where he's hunting down drug addicts. Like there's, in Marvel Comics Presents, there's an entire arc where he's basically looking for a coke dealer, and he's hunting these people down, and he's doing a lot of murder for a lot of good reasons. And there's some of those same stories where it's just boring because they're too much worried about, I got to make him feel angry and feel unrelenting and feel unwavering, and they lose the fact that he is a person and that he is motivated by something. And so you get those moments where he's not written very well. But you get stories by people like Barry Windsor Smith that I talked about earlier, which they have those same elements, but they're just done skillfully. Or you get like Larry Hama or Frank Miller.
Let's talk about that for just a second. Okay. When I was doing my research for this episode, one of the things that I realized is that I think Jason Aaron's been one of my favorite writers of Wolverine.
Yeah.
Who's been some of your guys' favorite writers of Wolverine?
Oh, my number one is Chris Claremont.
Yeah.
His stuff I've loved. He's got
going back to the miniseries. And
yeah, the miniseries, and of course the way he wrote him in X-Men, which, he had to grow into. He didn't like the character at all. And he and Dave Cockrum, when they started, the new X-Men team, Giant Size X-Men, they planned on writing him out of the series. They were going to get rid of him. The only reason that he didn't go away is because John Byrne took over for Cockrum. And John Byrne loved the character. And it was like, no way you can't get rid of him. Not only because I love him, because he's the only Canadian on the team. And John Byrne's Canadian. So,
I love John Byrne.
Yeah. And so So that's the reason Wolverine stayed around, and the character grew on Chris Claremont the longer he wrote him, and he really became one of his favorites. And in Uncanny X-Men number 133 is the first issue where we see, the get things done badass version of Wolverine. And if that's the issue where he, where the X-Men have been taken captive by the Hellfire Club, and of course he's cast down into the sewer. Issue number 33 is when he comes back to free the X-Men. That's the first time you see Wolverine really getting things done.
Yeah.
And that's what set off, the new, I guess you would say, version of the character. Because up until then, he was just a jerk in the background. If you go back and read those old X-Men, he doesn't do a whole lot other than try to piss off Cyclops by being an asshole.
Well, he was always that kind of comedic element.
Yeah, but he didn't. But that's really, he didn't do anything special other than and
which is, like I said, I read a lot of those '80s comics, the '80s X-Men, and it was until I played the video game that I was just drawn to that.
But if you read the fan letters in those edits, all the fans hated Wolverine too. Like, who is this jerk? Why does all he do is complain? It's hilarious to go back and read those now.
Caleb,
again, Barry Windsor Smith.
Yeah,
like it doesn't.
I mean, that's a great choice. I mean, he wrote some fantastic Wolverine.
He's that dude for me when it comes to Wolverine. But I do want to throw some love to somebody that I think is underappreciated in the development of Wolverine's persona. And while I didn't like a lot, honestly, I'm going to say his name, and it's going to be, I'm going to flip flop a little bit on it. But it's Daniel Way. And so when I think about some of the more independent stories that I was just talking about, how he's written wrong, like in the plot wise, a lot of those come from Daniel Way, but a lot of the development as far as a character and stuff that carried over, I also attribute to Daniel Way. Like, I think that he really did a lot for the overarching understanding of the character, even though a lot of his stories and plots were kind of lackluster and he didn't know what to do with them. So it's one of those situations where I don't necessarily want to read the story, but as I'm reading stories that I really enjoy now, which include things like Jason Aaron's book, includes this one, I see things I'm like, oh, that's a seed that Daniel Way planted. So while he may be a good idea man, I love his ideas. I don't like his execution. Maybe that's the way to say it. I really like Simone Bianchi. He wrote one of my favorite Wolverine and Sabretooth stories. That really is just a hyper-violent mishmash of ass kicking. But yeah, I gotta say, I'm not in a team. You got to give Claremont credit, but Claremont has not largely written the things I love about the character. Mark Millar, as far as an outside of continuity version of Wolverine,
he did some great in continuity stuff.
He did. Too. When I think of the Wolverine I like from Mark Millar, though, I think about Old Man Logan.
Of course, yeah.
Like that's the Wolverine from him that I like. Larry,
and I think that is considered in continuity, though.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is now. They worked it in. They worked it into continuity. Yeah.
Yeah, that's. But I don't even.
Even when it was written, it was just in the future. It wasn't.
Well, okay, yeah, sure. So it was in the future, but it was one of those things like if we get we could go here, but by that point there was also like 5 other different ways the Marvel universe ended.
For sure.
So
is always the thing you run into when you do these old, like end of days type stories.
So it was on the peripheral of continuity. Like it's one of those things that they could have gone there if they wanted to, but it was enough outside.
It was absolutely
continuity.
In the main Wolverine title though, so it was
But see, I thought they established in this recent issue like it was a whole other universe, because that was one of the things that we got.
In the new stuff, they've retconned that it was a different universe. Yeah.
So,
which with the way Hickman's writing X-Men now, it could be any number of the different chains that happen. So, there's been some really dark moments in Wolverine's history.
You don't say.
What are some of your favorite dark moments, and maybe we'll talk about one and move on and kind of roundtable those for a minute.
Well, tell me what you mean by dark moments specifically.
Well, things where either he went dark or dark shit happened to him, or just anything of that nature.
Man, the Old Man Logan stuff is what jumps out to me when it comes to dark moments.
Yeah.
I mean, I walked away from the character for years because in the 90s, what Marvel was doing with the character, I did not like at all. So instead of, hate reading it and bitching about it, making myself miserable, I just put it down and walked away and thought, I've got all these old ones I can still appreciate.
That's always good advice.
Yeah.
There's so many people that get stuck on stuff they don't like now that they can't love what they loved in the past.
Yeah.
So.
But as far as like the dark, that's why I had to ask like dark moments, which you really meant, because that whole area is dark because I ignored it.
let me give you one that so you kind of get what I'm talking about. Wolverine's Revenge by Jason Aaron and Renato Guedes. This is following the events of Wolverine Goes to Hell.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes out and he's searching for the cult that in Wolverine Goes to Hell, they took his soul, sent it to hell, left his body alive on Earth, and it was possessed by a demon that was killing or trying to kill his friends. So now, of course, he's seeking revenge. And he finds this cult, and he marches through their tower, and it's regular humans, but all of them have like these massive amounts of mutant bodyguards, and he just savagely wrecks all of these mutant bodyguards getting to this cult. And when he finally gets there, they've all poisoned themselves, and he finds a recording playing that says, "Oh, by the way, all of those mutants you killed, they're your bastard children."
Mm-hmm.
And he spends the next few weeks throwing himself off of cliffs, trying to kill himself.
Yeah.
To me, that's when I say dark moments, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Not that Old Man Logan is definitely a dark moment.
Yeah, the opening of that story is like, oh, damn. Yeah.
Well, and there's been a couple of different moments like that where Wolverine's had to kill kids that I think are some of the darker moments. I forget what issue it was or who even was the writer at that time, but and hell, it may have even been an Ultimate X-Men, but he had to kill a teenager, or he had to kill a kid that it was a mutant that's powers developed before puberty. Like that happens a few times. I mean, that's guys like Multiple Man that happens. Right. Sometimes they manifest super early, but this kid's powers developed too early, and he was killing people. Like he couldn't control it. He was losing it, and Wolverine had to kill this. I mean, hell, I don't even think they gave the kid a name. He had to kill this minor, this boy that didn't deserve it. But it was like rock in a hard place. Like, if I don't do this, all of these people are going to die. Right. And Wolverine is that character who will do that. I mean, we saw that with Jean Grey when he when he had to kill Jean.
I mean, in fairness, he killed her to keep from her having a horrible death, but he did kill her.
Yeah, that he does the dirty work of the X-Men.
Right.
That's another one of those things I listed as a characteristic that I drew me to him. He does the things that other characters are not willing to do.
Are there other dark moments in his history that stand out to you?
Killing Jean Grey.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Killing Daken.
Yeah, that was one that was on my list too. And that story's crazy interesting too. So
again, and that's a drug story.
That was a drug story. The Daken story was a drug story, but it tied into the X-Force run.
Yeah.
And it was insane. Daken had threatened to kill all of the children that he was teaching at the Jean Grey School for the Gifted, and so he killed them the only way he knew how, which was basically in a mud puddle.
Right.
He kills his own son. I mean, it's so many dark moments, and just this guy has been abused his powers abused throughout history.
Yeah, I don't understand the hate that Daken gets as a character.
Daken's a great character. I really enjoyed that book that led up to that, where he had the drug problem and he was trying to be a better person, but all of those things happen.
So, like I said, I personally love Daken, and it's funny you're talking about Iceman in recent continuity. Before the big relaunch where they had that. Where they kind of upped everything and erased some of the things they didn't want to do. There was this Iceman series where Iceman and Daken are kind of dating, which was really, really cool. Let's talk about Wolverine's bastards kids for a minute. Like, is there a character in Marvel that has as many illegitimate children as Wolverine does that have come back and are continually like used? I mean,
I would say he doesn't have very many left anymore because he's killed most of them.
But like Wolverine is, to me, he's the Batman of the Marvel universe in that sense that he keeps getting, like, you've got Daken, which arguably is a bad guy most of the time, but is sometimes used. But you've got X-23. You've got Jimmy, who is an alternate universe, Jimmy Howlett, alternate universe version of Wolverine that comes over. Honey Badger. There are so many
clones of him, but still, you can consider them children.
Yeah.
I mean, when you live for as long as he's lived, I mean, it stands to reason that it's likely to happen, especially when you live the life he lives.
Yeah.
I mean, he can't remember who he was at different points in his life, so there's no telling how many kids that he's fathered. Yeah. And there may be kids out there that he fathered that he loved and took care of that he's forgot about because of what they've done to him.
And I can see those being some really heart-wrenching stories if they ever decide to go that way.
Yeah.
Just a great character. So many fun moments with him over the years.
Well, on this, I want to go back to the Barry Windsor Smith Weapon X series. It surprises me how many people have not read that.
Yeah.
And what I always tell people, I'm like, this is my favorite standalone Wolverine story there is.
Fist bump.
Yeah. I mean, it is amazing. And what I always make it a point to tell people is he has very little dialogue in that series. I mean, there's most of that series, he doesn't say a word. It's all narrated by, basically the main scientist and scientist team that are, injecting the adamantium into him. But the way it's illustrated, the way that story is delivered, I don't know how many times I've read that series. It's incredible. And anybody that's not read that, get out there and read it.
Well, the Marvel Comics Presents line, honestly, that's got some of my favorite Wolverine stories, and of course Weapon X. But across the board, that was always kind of a Wolverine book. He was a beloved character at the time that book came out, and that whole series has a special place in my heart just because of what it was. You pick up and it's essentially an anthology comic that costs the price of a regular comic that gives you 4 or 5 different stories that go across. I mean, some of my favorite Iron Fist comes from there. There's some amazing Man-Thing stories that come out of there, but it sweeps across the scope of the Marvel universe. And for kids who are on a budget, kids whose parents don't have the money to buy them 5 different comics with these different characters, they pick up a book like that and you just fall in love with the Marvel universe at large. And they tried to resurrect that series again using Wolverine as the main figure right after they kind of brought everybody back. I mean, once they finally got past the Charles Soule bullshit, they were trying to use that to segue in some more stuff, but they really focused on some characters and stuff that didn't pull too many people in. And I don't think I think they forgot that it wasn't necessarily supposed to make you fall in love with the popular characters as much. It was, for people who didn't want a comic that cost $4 or $5 and just focused on one corner of the universe. This was supposed to cover everything, and it didn't. I tried to grab it, and it just didn't grab me back.
Same.
Yeah, it didn't grab me either.
And it didn't have a good Wolverine story. And again, we try to keep things mostly positive on here, but I think what Charles Soule did to the character was incredibly detrimental, and I think Marvel's going to forget most of that.
For sure. They're ignoring it now anyway. The whole heated blades and all of that stuff. I mean,
you got some good art in the death of Wolverine. You did get good art to it, but the story wasn't there.
I mean, like most of the X-Men, what's happened for the past 15 years has been forgettable.
Yeah.
Until now. Other than I really like the Jason Aaron Wolverine stuff, and that was like the mid 2000s, and then I loved Wolverine and the X-Men. The first volume of that was good, and then it kind of went downhill pretty quick. But Kid Omega and Wolverine teaming up in anything are just quality.
That to me feels like the new Jubilee and Wolverine relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that's cool because they're taking a character that, Wolverine has been like, I don't want to use the word father figure or necessarily babysitter, even though that's a lot of
big
what he
brother, I would say, to a lot of these.
To Kitty Pryde, to Jubilee, to a lot of these,
X-23.
to a lot of these young female figures. And to me, it's neat seeing him do that with Kid Omega, who is a very, I would argue, a very queer character, who is not locked down to any one particular gender role. Like I interpret Kid Omega to be a very queer character, and so it's cool seeing Wolverine play that father figure to somebody else other than just a young woman. Even though I love that he does play the role with young women and some incredible young women throughout the issue.
The interaction between them is just amazing.
Oh yeah,
regardless of who you could have written that character is, but that their interaction is just fantastic, and it started in Wolverine and the X-Men and is continuing on now into X-Force. And, you had two very different types of personalities. Mm-hmm. You have a kid that doesn't think they need a big brother figure. Mm-hmm. And then you have a big brother figure that looks at that kid and says he definitely needs a big brother figure.
It's a formula that works.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, and we see it outside of comics. I mean, there's other amazing stories that have that same formula to it, and it just works so well, especially with a character who, like I said, is as flexible as Wolverine can be, even though he is a very rigid outline of a person.
Well, when he's written at his best, he's got a heart of gold, in my opinion. Yes, he does what has to be done, but, it was the X-Force run following the events of Messiah Complex where they turned him and X-Force into this death group for Scott. Mm-hmm. That really created all of this friction between Scott and him that later played itself out. I won't say it played itself out well, but it played itself out. But you had all of that friction because Scott despised him, but still used him.
But needed him,
to do the things that he couldn't do as an X-Man. And Wolverine began to despise Scott for sending him on these kill missions.
Yeah.
So that plays at this heart that he has buried inside of him that, he doesn't let everybody see, but those close to him know it's there.
Yeah, he's got a conscience. And that's the thing that people, I think, forget about him sometimes is that's still there. Like, he regrets doing some of the things that he has to do, but he still does them, and he'll do them again.
He's definitely the guy you want as your friend, because if something happens to you, he's going to stop at nothing to either find you or make the people that hurt you pay.
Well, number one, he's a human bottle opener, so that helps.
Yes.
So I don't think we can talk about Wolverine and not we've already brought up the video games where he was talking about. I think for
Are we going to go into the bad movies?
We can go into the good parts of the bad movies. I don't think you can talk about Wolverine and not talk about Hugh Jackman.
For sure.
I don't think you can talk about Wolverine and not talk about the X-Men animated series, which we haven't dove too much in. Because I know for a lot of people of my generation, which I'm about, 10 years younger than you guys, a lot of people's first introduction to Wolverine...
20 years younger.
I was going to go 10. You're a youthful-looking gentleman, Craig. A lot of our introduction to the X-Men at large, and to Wolverine in particular, comes from the animated series. So much of what I think of my initial inception of it was the person I saw that had that brotherhood with Morph from the first season, I think it was, where he wanted to bring back Morph into the fold. And you look at this character who is a walking wood chipper, so to speak, but is the one who's driving to go get this man back, this friend back, when everybody else is just like, oh no, he's gone, let's just mourn him and move on with their life. He's like, no. Like, once he figures out he's alive, he's like, we have to go right this wrong. And so that to me was almost that to me is the outline of the character that I know and love. To me, you don't get that in a lot of stories, and to me that is driven home by his inception in the animated series.
So the animated series is something that, again, my age plays against me on this. Mm-hmm. I didn't watch it when it was coming out. Now that it's on Disney Plus, I'm slowly starting to watch it. So, what I've seen of it, I really enjoy, and I can't wait to get caught up on it. But I've got so many different things I'm watching at the moment. It's probably going to be a minute.
Yeah. Matt, like, you speak about it all the time.
Oh yeah, I've been rewatching them all. I don't know how many seasons I'm in now, to be honest. I'm 3 to 4 seasons into it.
How many seasons is it? Like 6 or 7?
No, I
It's
believe it's
5.
5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and even the 5th one's not like what you would call a full season.
Gotcha.
But by and large, yeah, they like all the characters. I mean, they did the writing on that 90s X-Men cartoon was really good. I forgot how good it was.
Yeah.
And the characters are spot on.
Does it do that typical thing where it starts off and like the first season is kind of kid friendly?
No.
And then as you get further on, it becomes more and more.
They took what I call the Ninja Turtles model, where it's just so Ninja Turtles and arguably the X-Men series were actually pretty violent. They just didn't show anybody getting stabbed. There was no blood, like there wasn't much of gore. So you look at things like the Ninja Turtles, and you've got like what 3 out of the 4 have, or no, 2 out of 4 have knives, but nobody ever actually gets impaled.
It's G.I. Joe type violence.
Yeah, so they do that with it. So it's still there. It's not so graphic that they show you the end part of it.
Gotcha. Okay. Kind of happens off scene, or it happens in a way that you don't see
except when it's not people. I did notice when I was realizing how much. They sliced him in half, but that's also a clone.
Yep, that's a robot. Yeah, Wolverine uses his claws on robots.
Yeah.
It's really funny when Sabretooth shows up, because they fight and both of them have claws and they don't use them. They just grapple.
Yeah.
And yell. It's pretty funny. Yeah, Saturday morning.
But no, I think it's great. So as you're rewatching it, is it holding up for you? Like as far as so I tried to rewatch it when Disney Plus dropped, and I've got to actually have it all on DVD. So it's nothing new. I revisit it from time to time. It is very of its time animation to me. So
it's hard, bad animation for its
time.
time.
It's hard to watch.
Well, to be honest, a lot of those 80s and 90s cartoons, the animation is not good. But it was entertaining.
Yeah.
The stories are written well enough that the animation is sufficient enough to get through. I grew up on Thundercats and things of this. Bad animation doesn't scare me away.
Yeah.
From a cartoon.
Yeah, for the time, it didn't look that bad because there was a lot of bad animation. And this is the time when Marvel had some financial strain. They're under financial strain. So they didn't have a lot of money to throw out. Now, as you get deeper into the series, the animation gets better because the cartoon was successful. Right. But yeah, that first couple of seasons, man, the animation is rough. The writing is so good. That's what it keeps me on. But yeah,
it's hard to watch. But you look at, there's some other shows that didn't have that issue.
Can't talk about it without talking about the theme song, right?
No, man, yeah. So
everybody knows the theme song.
If I could turn a song into a tattoo.
Man, yeah.
That one. But so Hugh Jackman. He was a casting that did not look the part. I didn't think translated well visually, but he poured his heart and soul in that role, and there's to me his acting skill really showed off.
See, I think visually he was fine, other than his height. I feel like his height is the only.
I always felt like he was too. Up until Logan, I felt like he was too skinny. I never felt like he was like small and bulky enough.
Yeah, maybe, but part of that's just his natural build.
Yeah.
But, to me, he became Wolverine personified.
Mm-hmm. No, he
If you can take any of the best parts out of the X-Men movies, it's Wolverine.
Yep.
And Logan is a fantastic movie. The rest of them, but Logan is a fantastic movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Other than
I like X1.
Yeah.
X-Men
1, it doesn't hold up as well now, but when it came out, I certainly really liked it.
Yeah.
And for the time it was released, it was a good movie.
Yeah.
When X1 came out, I couldn't believe we were getting. I was still in dreamland that we were getting Wolverine on the big screen.
Yeah.
Something as a kid I convinced myself would never happen. So hardly anybody could have played him, and I still would have been thrilled because it was a reality that it was on the screen. Because I still couldn't get over that when it actually occurred, and the way they introduced him in the movie, I thought was just so well done.
I agree. Yeah, I thought his role in the movies was fine. Some of the stories let down the characters. Of course. I thought he did great. And as Caleb said, his acting ability really, he really poured it into that character.
Well, and I certainly appreciate Hugh Jackman, but it's just, and this is hardly rare, but it just really bugged me for a long time, and it still does a little bit, that these people didn't have the guts to cast Wolverine, to physically look like
Right.
what he does.
He had to be like
handsome and
Yeah.
6 foot tall. Because and that's something I've explained to people is like that's one of the cornerstones that make the character so interesting is he doesn't fit in with all these good looking people.
Right.
Good looking people. No, it's not what Wolverine is.
Right.
I just
Well, and you look at some of the way he's drawn. He's a feral, and arguably, I think that his portrayal of Wolverine has changed the way we see him in the comics because he is kind of drawn prettier now. But you look at the history.
I'm looking at that cover.
Well, that one's actually a really good depiction of what he's.
I guess you would say traditionally attractive is the way you would have to say that, because women, in continuity for years, women are drawn to him because he's a very enigmatic character, but he's not traditionally attractive.
He's, that kind of rough, physical man that some people are drawn to, and that,
As soon as I hit puberty, first thing I tried to do was grow sideburns like that. And I had
Could
sideburns.
you grow your hair like that?
I had no. I grew, my sideburns went all the way down to my jawline, and I kept them there all the way through college. Wow. Yeah, I had these long. They weren't.
We have to see pictures of this.
Yeah. I kept them there for a long time.
Look at me, I can grow facial hair.
Well, I got my first real job out of college. They were like, "Could you raise those up a little bit?"
those need to go.
Lamb chops are out of style, buddy.
Yeah.
Do they have to be though?
No.
I mean, Lemmy will live on forever through his mutton chops. So I kind of had a really cool story that I wanted to share with you guys that kind of focuses around Wolverine, if we have time.
Sure.
So my job used to make me travel around the country. Mm-hmm. I used to go to different military bases and do stuff. The job I had before I started law school, and I went to Minnesota one time, and outside of work, this was about 6 years ago now. I wore a lot of comic T-shirts. I don't necessarily wear a ton of them anymore, just because I knit lounge shirts. But I was in my off time wearing my shirts around the hotel, and there was a guy that was working behind the desk. And he was, really nice guy. I'd spoken to him a few different times, but he'd seen me walking back and forth through the hallway with my shirts on. And he stopped my buddy Jib, who, rest in peace. He was an amazing guy. But he's like, "Hey, I keep seeing this guy walking back and forth, wearing these shirts. I used to work for Marvel Comics." Mm. And he was like, "Oh, what did you do?" He's like, "Well, I was an artist for Marvel Comics for a while, for a good long time," and it's just cool in and of itself. So we were sitting there talking, and I went to meet him and everything, and he was a figure that had worked on the character for a long time, and he did a lot of the work that you see in Marvel Comics Presents. Like you look at some of the different stuff that he drew, and I'm trying to remember his name off the top of my head.
Great story, Caleb.
Well, no, his last name is Jensen, but it's not Klaus Jensen by any means.
Gotcha.
But he actually designed some of those covers that you see from Marvel Comics Presents that show Havoc with all the waves and stuff around him, and that iconic scene of Wolverine jumping that they've recycled 1,000 times. Mr. Jensen created that. And I met him because his eyesight had started to go, and he was managing this hotel chain. So I got to, for about a month and a half, go sit down in the lobby and just talk to this former Marvel artist.
Nice.
Several times. Just an incredibly great guy, and he had so many really cool stories about working with guys like Larry Hama and working with all the greats from that he did those books with, that he worked with Marvel, and he was primarily an inker. It's what his forte was, and it was just totally out of the blue, and you never know where you're going to meet some of these figures at and what they're going to be doing.
Yeah.
Just really crushed it.
Nice.
And he showed me all of his sketchbooks. And as far as I know, he's still there. I would love to at some point call and reconnect with him and see if we could
Was it Dennis Jenkins?
Dennis Jensen. Dennis Jensen. That was it. He awesome
I looked up
guy.
Marvel inker Jensen.
Thanks, Google. Yeah, so I need to see if I can reconnect with him, see how he's doing, and maybe interview him or something.
Yeah, way
see
cool.
if he would do that.
I bet he would.
That was just my random tie-in to Wolverine.
Yeah.
I met one of the best inkers on him, and he's one of the best because I met him. So,
I had a bunch of Wolverine T-shirts as a kid. My favorite one was, and I still can't believe they made a T-shirt out of this. It's one where Wolverine is naked, hunched over, and eating a fresh kill, and there's like steam coming out. It's totally dark. And that was like my favorite T-shirt. I wore it out, and I still remember the first time I wore it to like a family get-together.
Dark like the dark times of the 90s.
Yeah. And my grandmother goes, "Oh, he's pretty. Who's that?" And then I had to explain who Wolverine was to my grandmother.
Mind your business, Nana.
Yeah.
I just have always been in love with this character as a comic book fan, and will probably always have a love in my heart for Wolverine. I think that he's overused sometimes. I think they put him on too many teams.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what team I really did like him on? Spurrier's X-Force.
I think X-Force, he should always be on X-Force, and he should always have a solo book. You can sporadically have him in other books, but I don't love when he's on the Avengers.
No.
I just don't.
It's weird.
Yeah.
Feels weird.
Now, having said that, now that the X-Men are part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I would love to see Wolverine with the rest of the group. But I don't love him in Avengers books usually.
I love him. My two favorite places to see him is in X-Men and his own book.
Yeah.
Because I still think he brings so much to an X-Men book.
He does.
Again, because if for no other reason, he's the dirty work guy of the team.
So before we move on, I got to ask, just so we're on the record, favorite Wolverine costume?
Oh gosh,
I like the brown and yellow.
So the Jim Lee.
Yeah.
We didn't mention him a lot on this episode. Is he not?
You know, I just don't think that Jim Lee worked on a lot of iconic Wolverine stories.
Yeah.
He was on Wolverine, but I don't think he worked on a lot of the iconic
Well,
ones.
it was the X-Men.
Yeah,
it was the adjectiveless X-Men that he was kind of the most known for, and he got the brown and gold, for lack of a better term. Periwinkle.
Yeah.
Goldenrod.
I mean, that to me is my favorite one, but I mean, the original's not, I kind of like when he's just drawn in a t-shirt and jeans. Too.
Yeah, that's, I always think of John Buscema's, run on him. And most of that, he's just wearing,
most of
a
his
ninja
solos,
outfit, basically. I mean, he's not in a costume.
Most of his solo stuff's just him in jeans or him
and,
in a leather
and that's
jacket.
something else I always liked about the character is he dresses, he doesn't give a crap about fashion or how he looks. It's another thing I always thought was hilarious. Again,
He's not frilly.
Compared to Cyclops, who takes a lot longer to get ready to leave the house than Jean does, probably.
Well, in one of the best lines in the movies in X1 is when he says, "What did you expect? Blue and gold?"
Yeah. I said yes out loud in the theater.
I just died laughing.
Mine is I'm still going to call it the Herb Trimpe design.
Mine's
Herb, and it's Herb Trimpe drawing it. That I still think that's my favorite iteration of any of his costumes.
Yeah. Now that Remedy Senior designed it though.
Yeah, he did, but Herb Trimpe drew it the best. And it's really sleek. It's gorgeous. The coloration.
It was a great introduction for a great character.
It was. So Hulk 180 or Hulk 181?
Since I own Hulk 180, I'm going with Hulk 180. I mean, technically you have to consider them both, I guess.
Yeah.
But he's got a full page in 180. To me, that's more than a cameo.
Facts. I'll go with that. I'll give you that one. Either way, it doesn't make any difference to me. I think they're awesome. I don't own either one of them. So,
yeah, same.
Did I ever tell you how much I paid for my Hulk 180?
I don't want to hear it because you have
75 cents at a estate sale.
Bastard.
Nice. That's hilarious.
It's like people like, I paid $1 for my New Mutants 98.
Yeah.
Like Craig, who I think paid $1 for his New Mutants 98.
No, I actually paid for my New Mutants 98.
Oh, did you? I thought.
Yeah.
Who do we know that found one?
Sean. Well, Sean had, bought it off the shelf.
Yeah.
And still
beat all
has
to
it.
hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Damn it. That never happens to me. I have that dream that I'm going to
Somebody
find
found one
somebody's-
for $1 somewhere. Matt did.
Matt did.
Matt
Matt
Dykes
Dykes
did.
did, yeah.
He found one in at a flea market.
That was just a year or two ago.
Yeah.
It
For
never-
$1.
It never happens to me.
Well, you got to go to these places.
That's true.
Yeah. It's
gotta
like
get out of
winning
the
the
house.
lottery. If you don't buy the lottery ticket, you're never going to win.
Is that how it works?
Yeah.
Damn it.
I keep thinking that someday somebody's going to show up and say, "Hey, Craig, you won $500 million today in the lottery, but I didn't play the lottery. It doesn't matter. Here's your ticket you won."
That's the dream. Well, one place, you could, we never know if these things are going to blow up or not, but one thing you can do if you want to own tomorrow's like graded comics, like the best comics that are going to have the new hit character and be worth a lot of money, even though they're probably not going to be, is by buying new comics. And you know where you can buy new comics at your local comic shop. You can buy them on
Kill Avenue in Sherwood.
Yeah, that one.
Sherwood,
or
Arkansas.
if you're not in Little Rock, you're far, far away. Go to the Googles and find a comic shop, or you can get them. There's DCB service. There's all kinds of digital platforms that you can buy them. As long as you're not stealing them, we completely support however you want to read the comics.
As long as you are paying for them and supporting your artist.
So, and you do that every Wednesday when the new comic books come out. So I am curious with you guys, as of always, what's coming out this next week that caught your eye? What's hitting the shelves on New Comic Book Day that you think is going to be worth grabbing? What you got, Matt?
So what caught my attention is from Marvel Comics' Fantastic Four Grim Noir by Jerry Dugan and Ron Garney. And there is no synopsis that I saw with this. Mm-hmm. So this has really got my curiosity piqued. What is this creative team going to do in a noir setting with Ben Grimm?
Huh.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah. For a second, I thought you were going to steal mine.
If I knew what yours was, I would have.
What is yours, Craig?
X-Men Fantastic Four #2.
Oh.
Chip Zdarsky and Terry Dodson.
Man, I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's Chip Zdarsky continues to prove he should have been the one put on Fantastic Four.
Yes.
and that first story was just amazing. So the first issue.
Haven't read it yet. I need to. Shame on me.
Well,
damn
they sold
good.
out.
Yeah.
So
I
you have to
hear
get it
good things.
digitally at this point.
So I'm going in kind of a different direction. I'm derailing the show from the Marvel train for a little bit. There is a book coming out this next week from a publisher that is near and dear to my heart. I love them. I think they're putting out great stuff, and I think they're putting out stuff that comics needs, and that is Drawn and Quarterly. And the book that is coming out is called Becoming Horses. It's a graphic novel. I am incredibly interested in this book just based on the synopsis alone. Becoming Horses is a book that essentially, I want you to imagine this way. You remember when you were kids and you would look at like squiggly lines or shapes somewhere and you'd make a picture out of it in your brain? That's what this book does. That's what this book kind of focuses on. Think about squinting hard and looking for just the right angle to find everything around you sparkles a little bit more and is just the right kind of shapes, and everything's kind of fuzzy. It's, the synopsis says it's a mix of delicate cartooning and brash collage. It's done in watercolor and photography. This book is done by a cartoonist and an artist named Disa Wallander. Her drawings are experimental yet accessible, and her characters, they mull over these big questions about life and art, and it philosophizes about it in kind of a modern voice. So I love these types of books. I think that they are what are pushing the medium on and forward to do new things. And so I can't wait to get my hands on this. And that's Becoming Horses from Drawn and Quarterly. And we will surprise you with a fourth book at some point when I make a graphic. So so be on the lookout for what our mystery book is, and we'll get it to you. Well, guys, we got anything else we want to cover? Or
Think we covered it all?
do we need to go more into
Go
Wolverine?
read some more
Oh,
Wolverine.
man, we could.
Yeah. Yeah, I had 3 pages of notes. We could have went on forever with Wolverine.
He's a cool character. Cool design. There's lots of him. Well, if nothing else, we would like to invite you. Maybe you want to talk about some Wolverine stuff that we didn't cover, which would be cool. We love that. And you know where you can do that at? Craig, tell them where they can do that at.
You do it at Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and all of those are SFG something or other at something or other. This is why you do this part. I don't know why.
Slow down so I can write that down.
I thought you were going to pause at Facebook and I was going to take over. You just kind of kept going.
Oh, okay.
No, we do have our Facebook group, which is always fun. Lots of folks on there talking about some really cool stuff. You can go there. You just type in Southern Fried Geekery Podcast in the search bar. We will pop up. You join, you answer the questions, you become a member of the group, and it's rad. You can get us on Instagram and on Twitter. Like Craig said, we're at SFG Podcast on both of those.
There we go.
If you want to...
I knew it was at SFG something.
You were so close. I was
so
proud
close,
of you.
Yeah.
You went there. And you got the bulk of it. Well, that's like an A, right?
No, A minus.
No, B plus.
Okay. C minus.
If you...
Yeah.
Red marks all over your page over here.
Just lead on it.
Just bleed on it, yeah. If you were mortally offended that I said that I did not love Wolverine in the same way that Matt and Craig did, and you need to cuss me out about it, you need to correct me, and you need to call me a plebeian and say bad things about my mama or something like that, you can send that email that I know you want to send to southernfriedgeekery@gmail.com. And if nothing else, go forth and love some comics. Woo!